On October 19, 1982, John Z. DeLorean walked into a trap. The setting was not a factory or a boardroom or a car show. It was a hotel room near Los Angeles, wired for federal agents, with a suitcase of cocaine placed at the center of the story. DeLorean was supposed to be the desperate businessman who had crossed the line. The government said it had caught him trying to save his company with drug money. His lawyers would later say something darker, that the FBI had not discovered a crime. It had built one. By then, the Belfast factory was already in receivership. Production had been suspended. The workers had been sent home. And the stainless steel sports car that was supposed to rescue John DeLorean's name was becoming evidence in a very different kind of trial. DeLorean had spent years making himself into the rarest thing in Detroit, an executive with a public persona. At General Motors, he was linked to cars like the Pontiac GTO and Firebird, machines that gave Pontiac swagger and gave DeLorean a reputation as the rebel inside the corporation. He was young, polished, and ambitious. After leaving GM, he formed the DeLorean Motor Company in 1975. The idea was not modest. He would build a new kind of sports car under his own name, prove that an independent could challenge Detroit, and turn his celebrity into a car company. But a name was not enough. He needed a design, an engineer, a factory, and a mountain of money before a single customer could turn a key. For the shape, DeLorean went to Giorgetto Giugiaro and Italdesign. Giugiaro gave him the image everyone remembers: a low wedge, bare stainless steel panels, and gull-wing doors that made the car look as if it belonged to tomorrow. For the first working prototype, DeLorean relied on William T. Collins, a former Pontiac chief engineer who completed the DSV-1 in October 1976. That prototype mattered because it made the dream visible. It gave DeLorean something he could show to investors and governments. The car looked futuristic. The pitch sounded patriotic. But the hard part was still ahead. A prototype can be charming. Production is merciless. The money came from Northern Ireland. In August 1978, Secretary of State Roy Mason stood beside DeLorean as the British government backed a factory at Dunmurry, outside Belfast. It was more than a car deal. It was an industrial policy wager in the middle of the Troubles, a promise that jobs in modern manufacturing could push back against despair. Later audit reporting put government assistance at some £77 million, while contemporary reports used different figures depending on scope and currency. In Parliament, Minister J.D. Concannon described a package involving Northern Ireland Development Agency equity and loan capital, along with grants and loans from the Department of Commerce. The details stayed confidential. The public message was simpler. Belfast would build the car of the future. The car still needed to be made real. DeLorean's original concept was not ready for mass production, so he brought in Colin Chapman and Lotus. Chapman was one of the most brilliant figures in British performance engineering, and Lotus replaced much of the original chassis idea with a backbone-style structure derived from its own experience. In one sense, Chapman helped save the car. Without Lotus, the DMC-12 might never have reached the assembly line at all. But that rescue came with a shadow. Later reports and investigations tied Chapman and Lotus to allegations about missing government-backed development money, with GPD services becoming part of the disputed money trail. The amounts and legal framing vary by source, so the safest version is also the most damning. The public money story did not end with a failed factory. It became a scandal of its own. Chapman died in December 1982, before any full reckoning. On January 21, 1981, the first DMC-12 rolled off the line in Dunmurry. For a moment, the promise seemed real. The car was unmistakable. Stainless steel did not need paint. The doors opened upward. The profile looked unlike anything else on the road. But the theater could not hide the company's deeper problem. The car had to sell quickly in large numbers, and it did not. By the end of 1981, the shape of the crisis was clear. The factory had built thousands of cars, but far fewer had sold. Exact totals vary, and they should. The point is not whether the number was 7,500 or something close to it. The point is that unsold cars were stacking up while the company ran out of cash. In February 1982, the Northern Ireland company entered receivership. The government bet became a public money recovery problem. On May 24th, receivers announced that production would be suspended and that almost all employees would be made redundant by the end of the month. The factory dream collapsed fast. DeLorean had sold Belfast a future, and Belfast had given him one. Now, both were left with the bill. Later, the Westminster Public Accounts Committee would call the project one of the gravest cases of misuse of public resources to come before it. That is a brutal epitaph for a car that had been sold as hope. Then came James T. Hoffman. Hoffman was a convicted drug trafficker who became a government informant, and he approached DeLorean as a supposed path to rescue money. Another figure in the setup was Benedict Tisa, an FBI agent posing as a crooked banker under the name James Benedict. The government case was built through meetings, recordings, and pressure. Assistant U.S. Attorney James P. Walsh Jr. would present DeLorean as a desperate automaker willing to enter a cocaine scheme to save himself. The facts looked sensational. A famous executive, a failed car company, a suitcase of cocaine. But the central question was not whether DeLorean was desperate. Everyone knew he was. The question was whether desperation had made him a criminal or whether the government had manufactured the crime it wanted to prosecute. Howard Weitzman made that question the heart of the defense. When the trial opened in April 1984, he did not have to prove John DeLorean was wise, honest, or innocent of every bad decision that had brought him there. He had to convince jurors that the sting had crossed a line. Hoffman was vulnerable as a witness because of his own criminal history. Tisa's undercover role made the government's hand visible, and the tapes, meant to seal the case, gave the jury a way to study how the deal had been pushed. On August 16, 1984, DeLorean was acquitted on all 8 drug charges. The verdict did not resurrect the company. It did something stranger. It turned the government's most dramatic evidence into part of DeLorean's escape. The acquittal saved DeLorean from prison, but not from ruin. In December 1986, he won another acquittal on criminal finance charges tied to investor money. By then, the company was gone. The factory was gone. The production run was small, and exact totals still vary by source. And then Hollywood changed the car's meaning. In 1985, Back to the Future turned the DMC-12 into a time machine. The same details that had once made the car seem overpromised. The stainless body, the gull-wing doors, the science fiction silhouette suddenly became perfect. The public stopped seeing only receivership, scandal, and unsold inventory. A new generation saw not a failed government bet, but a machine that could punch through time itself. That is the final irony of the DeLorean DMC-12. As a business, it failed. As an industrial policy project, it became a warning. As a courtroom drama, it became a story about how far the government can go before a sting becomes entrapment. But as an object, the car survived all of it. It outlived the Belfast gamble, the missing money allegations, the federal trial, and John DeLorean's own reputation. People who know nothing about Roy Mason, J.D. Concannon, Colin Chapman, James Hoffman, Benedict Tisa, James Walsh, or Howard Weitzman still recognize the car the moment the doors rise. John DeLorean wanted to build the future. Instead, he built something more complicated, a monument to ambition, public money, desperation, and the strange mercy of pop culture. The factory closed, the scandal remained. The man never fully escaped the shadow, but the car did. It became famous not because the dream succeeded, but because the dream failed loudly enough for Hollywood to hear it.